PHP offers a variety of methods for creating, modifying, maintaining, accessing, and deleting files. The first method of PHP file access we will examine will involve the creation and manipulation of simple text files. In order to accomplish this, PHP makes use of certain built-in functions and methods. These methods are as follows. Fopen opens or creates a file. Fclose closes an open file. Fread reads data from an open file. Filesize returns the size of a file's contents. File reads the entire contents of an unopened file. Fgetc reads an entire unopened file. Fgets reads a single line from a file. Fgetc reads a single character from a file. Feof returns true if at the end of a file. Fwrite writes text to an open file. FilePutContents writes a string to an unopened file. FileExists returns true if the file exists and false if not. And flock locks a file so that it cannot be written to. Let's first analyze the fopen function. The method fopen is used to open or create a text file for both writing to and reading from. When fopen opens a file, it maintains a file pointer that can be used to ascertain the position in the file from which the program desires to write to or read from. A syntax example would be as follows. In this case, we have a string data file. We're going to call the fopen method, and we're going to pass in the file name, and we're going to pass in w as a parameter so that it can be used for writing to. The or die is sort of like a try and catch. So if for some reason we can't open the file, it will simply say the file name could not be opened. If it's successful, on the other hand, then data file acts sort of like a pointer to the file. And we can use data file to do things like read from the file and write to the file. Again, note, or die specifies what happens if the file cannot be opened. Next, let's examine the fclose function. The method fclose is used to close a file that has been open for reading or writing by the PHP interpreter. You should close a file whenever you no longer need it open for reading or writing, as this will reduce the demand on server resources and decrease the likelihood of damaged or corrupted data files that would otherwise be open or written to when regular backups occur or servers crash. A syntax example is fclose, and as an argument or parameter, we'll pass in the file variable data file, which points to the open file that we want to close. Here we have fread. The fread function can be used to read the contents of an entire file or only part of that file into a PHP string variable. It takes as arguments the file variable and the number of bytes to read. The method will continue loading the contents of a file into its variable character by character until the specified number of bytes or the end of file marker is returned. A syntax example would be fread and then the file variable pointing to the open file and the number of bytes you wish to read. Next is the filesize function. The filesize method returns the size and bytes of the entire contents of a file. It is useful since frequently a file size changes dynamically with the PHP application, or the exact size of a file may be unknown. You can combine file size with fread to load the entire contents of a file into a file variable. For example, look at the following syntax. We're calling the fread method, passing in the file variable data file, but since we don't exactly know how many bytes may be in the file, we use the file size method as the second parameter and pass in the file's name. Here we have the file method. The function file reads the entire contents of a file without the need for first opening the file with fopen or requiring the use of file size with fread. When the file method is used, it is also unnecessary to call fclose to close a file. This method returns an array of all the lines in a file. So, for example, look at the following syntax. The file variable data file is using the file method to open the file link data. Next, we're going to take a look at the function fileGetContents. The fileGetContents function also reads the entire contents of a file without the need for first opening the file with fopen or requiring the use of file size with fread. Look at the following syntax example. Our file variable data file is calling the method fileGetContents, and we're passing in the file's name linkdata. Here we have fgets. The method fgets reads a single line of a file. It takes a pair of arguments, the PHP file variable and the length limit of the file to be read in characters. It always stops one character short of what is specified. If you look at the following syntax example, we have our file variable, data file, we're calling the fgets method, we're passing in the file variable, and we're specifying 50. So in this case, the above PHP would continue reading until it had read 49 characters, or had reached the end of the file, or had encountered a new line character. The next step in our tour of file access functions is fgetc. The fgetc function reads a single character from a file. It only takes one parameter as an argument, the PHP file variable. Look at the following syntax example. We have our data file. To receive the results, we're calling fgetc and passing in the name of the file variable. It will just read one single character. Next, we have feof, or file end of file. The method feof returns the Boolean value true if the end of a file is detected, and false otherwise. It is useful with various read methods and must be used only with files previously opened with fopen. So take a look at the following syntax example. Here, data file is our file variable, and we call the fopen method to open the file secrets.dat, pass it in the argument or parameter r to make it read only. Next, we have a while true loop. Look at the condition part of the while statement inside the parentheses. Here we're calling feof, file end of file. Notice that the logical not operator, the exclamation point, prefixes or is in front of it. So we're saying while not end of file, keep reading until you get to the end of the file. So next we call the fgets method, and we assign the results to data from the file. We pass in the file variable as the first parameter, and the next parameter, in this case, we're telling it to read it into 512-byte chunks. And then we're going to display the results with the echo command. Finally, we close the while true loop when we get to the end of the file, and then we close the file with fclose. Now we're going to analyze fwrite. The fwrite method writes data to a file. It accepts two arguments, the string variable linked to the file to be written to, and the string containing the text to be written. To do this, the file must have first been opened and linked to a file variable with fopen. So look at the following syntax example. We're calling the fwrite method, we pass in the name of the file variable, and then we pass in what we want to write to the file, the string data. Next is file put contents. The file put contents function writes data to a file. It accepts two arguments, the string variable linked to the file to be written to, and the string containing the text to be written. This method does not require that a file first be opened with fopen. So look at the following syntax example. We're calling the method fileputContents. The file that we want to write to is data.dat, and then whatever's in the string data, will be written to the file. A very useful PHP file method is fileExists. The function fileExists returns a Boolean true if the file name passed in as an argument exists. Otherwise, it returns false. So if you look at the syntax example, we have an if-else logic structure. And in the condition part of the if statement, we have file exists. So when we call the file exists method, it'll return true if it finds linked data. If it does not find linked data, it'll return false. So in other words, if linked data exists, it'll say linked data is present on the system, and if not, it'll say linked data is not present on the system. In this example, we're going to illustrate the various methods that we've talked about concerning file access. So we have all of these function definitions here, just to modularize things and make it easy for this illustration. So let's jump down to the bottom where the code body is. And we're going to call or invoke these functions one by one. The first one we're going to call is does a file exist? All right. So let's go find does a file exist. And here we're going to use the fileExists method. And we're going to see if link data exists. Okay. That's the argument passed in here. If it exists, linked data is present on the system. If not, it's going to say linked data is not present on the system. Now, I've deleted all the files, so the very first time we load this page won't be there. So it'll say it's not present. But when I reload the page after the file has been created, then it'll say it is present on the system. Next, we're going to create the file. And again, I've written these functions to accept an argument, a string argument, so we're passing in linked data. Let's go see what create_a_file does. Create_a_file takes that parameter, or that argument, as string data. In this case, it would be linked data. That's the string literal. And it's going to open the file for writing with the fopen method. And if something goes wrong, we have the or die here, so it'll say, hey, linked data could not be opened. So if we were successful, if the file was open, then we'll say, hey, the file was created successfully. It's open, ready for writing. And here we're simply going to close the file. So that will take care of creating it. Next, we're going to write some data to the file. So In this case, we're going to, we want to create a file called areyouLikeACrazyPerson.dat. All right, so we're going to do that. Let's go look at what write to a file does. Are you like a crazy person? Write to a file in this case. All right, so it takes our are you like a crazy person.dat, it's the string literal. Here's our message. Voila, in view humble vaudevillian veteran, cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate, this visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified, and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vacheffing the violently vicious and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta held as a votive not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Verily this vichyssois verbiage veers most verbose, so let me simply add that it is my very good honor to meet you, and you may call me V. To which, remember, Natalie Portman says, "Are you like a crazy person?" Remember that movie V for Vendetta? But anyway, this is the string message that we want to write to the file. I just thought we'd have a little bit of fun there. Sorry, but okay. So we're going to open the file, which is going to be called areyouLikeACrazyPerson.dat. Once we open it, we're going to use the fwrite method, and we're going to take this string here, this whole string, right? V's, famous V speech from the movie. We're going to write it to the file using data file here, which, sort of is our file variable. It points to the open file. And if we wanted to keep track of the bytes, we could get that value returned from the fwrite method. And this will simply declare the number of bytes written to the file. Okay. So far this goes over using, file exists, how to create a file with fopen, and how to write to a file with fwrite. Okay. Now here, in this next function call, we're going to read 100 bytes of a file. Are you like a crazy person.dat? So we're not going to read the whole file. We could, but just to illustrate. So let's go take a look at that method, read 100 bytes. We open the file, and we're going to call fread, and notice our argument here. After the file pointer, which points to the open file, are you like a crazy person.dat, we're going to read 100 bytes. And then we'll simply display it right here. All right, that was returned to the string message 2. We'll display it right here. All right, so does the file exist? Let's practice creating a file. Let's create a different file with a different name. Let's write a message to it. And then here, let's read just 100 bytes of the file. Now, in this example, we're going to read an entire file. So let's go up here and look at what happens in read entire file. Read entire file, we take the string literal, the file name, we open it, and we call fread here. And we're going to use the method filesize because it's dynamic. We're not really sure how many bytes large the file is, but it doesn't matter. File size will figure it out, and so we can simply pass that in as the second argument. And then the return result would be message, and we'll display that. Okay, so the entire contents of the file would be loaded into that string, and then we could display it. Again, we're going to call does file exist once again. And whereas the first time it would say linked data is not present, the second time we call it, the file will have been created, and therefore it will say that it is present. So you get to see how that works, the file exist method. And then alternate file access methods 1 and 2. Again, we're just exploring different functions or different methods here. So this here, alternate file access method 1, will create a file called guyfox.dat. And it will input this message. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. All right, so it's going to write that into the file. Notice when we use the method file put contents, we don't have to open it with fopen or close it with fclose. Alternate file access method 2 does something similar, but here we're going to use the file method. All right, again, we're going to create guyfox.dat. And we want to, in this case, read the contents into a text array. And we're going to display it element, in this case element 0 here, the pointer to the entire array structure. Okay. And then here we're going to basically get a single line up to 35 characters, well, -1, 34. And here we're going to get a single character, so fgets and fgetc. We talked about all of these file methods before in the PowerPoint, and now we're just taking a look at how it works in code. So if we run it through the interpreter, let's see what happens. And also, before we do this, let me just show you. This is inetpub www root php1. So here's the directory where I have all of these example PHP files. Notice that none of those data files have been created yet, right? So there's no guyfox.dat, there's no, oh, you're like a crazy person.dat or anything like that, no link data. So let's see what happens when we run the script. And let me do 14.2 here. Okay, calling function, does a file exist? Link data is not present on the system. Nothing's been created yet. Calling function, create a file. The file link data was created successfully. And let's see. There's our file link data right there. Okay, nothing in it, 0 kilobytes, but it was created. You can see it wasn't there before, and it's there now. And calling function, write to a file. Number of bytes written to, are you like a crazy person, that is 799. Well, let's check that out. Let's open that file in Notepad, say, and see what's written to it, or what's in it. All right, so 799 bytes after calling write to a file. So let's take a look at, oh, you like a crazy person. Maybe you'll find that right here. Open that in Notepad. Wait a minute, I don't want to do that. And just open that in Notepad. Look it from a list here. Just associate. All right, so there you can see there's the famous V speech, or V for Vendetta speech written to the file. Okay. All right, next, calling function read 100 bytes of a file. So it's just going to read the first 100 bytes, and you can see it's not the whole speech by V, the 799 byte speech, just the first 100 bytes there. So you can hopefully get sort of a feel. To which EV, played by Natalie Portman, responds, are you like a crazy person? Now, calling function to read the entire file. So again, here's the entire V for Vendetta speech. Okay. Now, calling function, does a file exist? Now, before, notice up here, when it did not exist, it said link data is not present on the system. Now that it's been created and we call the function again, it says link data is present on the system. And then here are alternate file access methods. Displaying contents loaded from file. Remember the 5th of November gunpowder treason and plot. I see any reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. And remember that alternate method 1, let me scroll down here, was file put contents. And if we use that, we can write directly to the file without having to open it first with fopen or worry about closing it. Next is alternate file access method 2. And in this case, we are using, let me go back over here and scroll down. In this case, we're using the file method. And remember that the very first element is a pointer to the entire array itself, so we can use it to display the contents thereof. And that's what we're doing here. Remember the 5th of November, so that's the file method. 0, the first element, is sort of a pointer to the whole array structure. So we can display it just like that. And then result of calling fgets and fgetc to get a character and get a line. Finally, let's take a peek at flock. The method flock locks an open file. It takes as arguments the file variable to lock and one of 3 options. 1 means only read access to others while locked, or it also has a constant known as lock_sh. 2 means no access to others while locked, and it has a constant lock_ex for exclusive. And then 3 is to unlock the file, and it also has a constant lock_un. So, for example, if I call the method flock and I pass in the file variable and I pass in the constant lock_ex for exclusive, then it will allow no access to others while that file is locked. In this example, we're invoking the flock method. Now, flock is useful in many situations where you might want to lock a file. Say, for instance, where a file is part of a database system that's accessed by multiple users, and you need to be able to grant an exclusive lock on that file to a system process or a certain user. And you possibly don't want other users writing to that file while certain processes are happening. Well, you can use flock. Flock can be used in an if statement to determine whether or not you can obtain a lock on a file, and flock can be used to make an exclusive lock or create an exclusive lock on a file, and also to unlock a file. So in this first example, in an if statement, We're trying to, determine whether or not we can obtain an exclusive lock on the file with this symbolic constant here, lock x for lock exclusive. So if that returns true, then we know that we established the file lock successfully, and we'll display that. We will open the file for writing. We'll write something to it, curiouser and curiouser set Alice, and then we will unlock the file here. Okay? If we, for some reason, cannot obtain an exclusive lock on the file, then we'll say error locking file. And finally, we'll use fclose to close the file. So again, if we were to run this, nothing very exciting to see, but we'll pass it through the interpreter anyway just to see the code in action. Attempting to create a lock file and link data.txt, file lock established successfully.